Good morning. How are you all feeling today? Good, good. I hope you learned a thing or two yesterday, and we had a great session yesterday. That's what I felt personally, with the expertise of the panel members and the depth and the breadth of the areas and the subject matter they covered, and how to go about from implementing MetricStream to how do you go about standardizing your business processes and taxonomies and risk scorings to what is ahead with respect to cyber AI. I felt it's a great session. I hope you all enjoyed those sessions yesterday. And also last night, it was a good outing, good evening. We all spent together, and the award ceremony followed by our dinner and things like that, our breakout sessions. So I'm glad you're able to take some time out or pause and celebrate with us. I would like to, we had many winners last night, and once again, congratulations to all of our winners. And these leaders represent, GRC, across various industries: banking, insurance, technology, transportation, and energy. And I would like to call out one more time the award recipients last night. American Fidelity Insurance. Big round of applause for them. Apple Bank. The Pacific Gas and Electric Company. I'm not seeing much excitement. Autodesk. Yay! CNH Industrial. Intel. Guidewire. Where is and Dynata. And partner awards were given to S28, Vivid Edge, PwC, and AWS. Yay! Congratulations one more time. And I want to recognize few of our customers and partners in the audience and thank them for their participation and their guidance to us in helping shaping our products to implementing our products. We are through that journey. Namely, Michelle Melendez from Aon. Michelle, thank you. Yeah. Cindy Abbott. I don't know how to say Cindy. Where are you? Yeah. Hi, Cindy. Cindy Abbott. It's tough to say your. I'm used to the maiden name. And Kavita Singh from Bank United. And Martin from First Citizens Bank. Thank you. And to get things started, what is the most important thing you learned or you heard yesterday in your review? I'm going off script. Culture. Anything else? With respect to risk, GRC, what resonated the most with you? Responsible AI, that's good. What else? Correct? Great point. Yeah. 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 That's a great point. Yep. 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 Embrace technology. That's a great point I heard yesterday. Yes. Go ahead, Michael. Thank you. That's AI. I'm going to cover a few things about AI. Yes? You have to really understand the tool, learn the tool, and make the most out of the tool. Is that what you're saying? That's a very good point. Yes? Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Raghu. Thank you for that insight. Kelly? Sorry, your name? Alice. Hi. Yeah. Break down the silos, bring that interconnection across your domains, the space you're operating in, risk and compliance, the connected GRC. That resonated very well with me, but I'm living and breathing and used to the connectedness of GRC as we are building our platform and products. Okay, good. Great points. Thank you for all that. And just to get things started, good governance. We all believe in good governance, not just because it's the right thing to do, but also because it means you're setting the right procedures, policies, guidelines, and rules that protect and what you value the most. That's about good governance. Very quickly, I'm going to go through a couple of slides. If you're a bank, you're helping people achieve their financial goals. If you're a telecommunications company, you're helping your customers stay connected. If you're an energy company, you're keeping your people safe or your customers and comfortable in their homes. Managing risk is a right catalyst, or managing risk right is a catalyst for protecting what you value the most, and implementing a connected GRC and the strategy and the implementation of it is how you're going to do it. So implementing your GRC is a right catalyst for protecting what you value the most. That's what I want to highlight to all of you. And then moving into a couple of things or points that I noted yesterday. 3 points that I want to talk to you about. Interconnected risks require a connected approach. As you said rightfully, you have to break down those silos, communicate with all the different stakeholders in your organization, bring everybody together. And somebody was asking me a question yesterday: how do I go about implementing a GRC program? What do I need to do first? Right? People typically tend to say, oh, buy this right tool and go about how to figure out how to implement the tool. That's not the first step. The first step, in my view, based on my many years of experience implementing risk systems, building risk systems, the first thing you need to do when you're in the business side, right? Whether it's risk, compliance, audit, governance, you need to look at your business processes. And you need to bring standardization across those business processes, because your idea, your goal is to bring all of that together, right? Across all those functions and taxonomies. Standardize your business procedures and policies and your taxonomies, and come up with the right scoring methodologies. So various disciplines understand the same scoring methodologies. Those have to be consistent. You have to do a lot of groundwork first and understand what is that you're trying to achieve from that, implementing that GRC program. And then you look at, whether you have the right, skill sets internally to build it, or, in many cases, that's why we are here. We have that expertise. We can come to you and provide you that expertise, even in standardizing those things, if you will, to hold your hand through the, process of evaluating your risk and what you really need to do, what kind of assessments you need to implement, or control tests, or optimization programs you need to build or implement And that's where we come in and help you and building and go through that journey with you for a successful implementation of a GRC program. That's the first point. The second one is it's about AI. I believe I can't quite see that bullet, sorry. To me, I want to highlight two things about AI. First and foremost, big applause to Raghu and team, Joy, and MetricStream for launching Aspire. And two things, if you are going to use AI, right, you need to integrate AI into your existing products, and you have to understand how to train that model, implement that model, understand the biases of the model, and so you can get the most out of that model. For us, if we are going to use AI, we are going to integrate that into our existing products and to make our software more effective for our customers. That's what we are after. That's why we launched Aspire. To me, AI is going to be a profound technology, and it's at an inflection point, finally, and it's going to change how we do things in our day-to-day lives. And if I have to compare the power of AI and where we are with AI, it's like how we got introduced to mobile phones, to the web, and the migration to the cloud, and the advent of social media. And AI is of that significant proportion, and that's how it's going to transform in how we do things. However, we need to be responsible about AI, and I'm stopping short of saying regulate AI, but I'm sure that that'll be upon us very soon. So you have to have proper checks and balances with respect to when you use AI. You're hearing many stories in the media about that. And the last bullet, last point I wrote down, is about you must understand risk. You have to understand the risks related to your business clearly. You need to know what your risks are before you can manage. And those are the points I gotten away, and the feedback, especially from what I learned yesterday with respect to the risk. We have an exciting day ahead, and I look forward to hearing many of these sessions today, and as these themes and that are developing, and what are the new themes that are emerging in the market. And I'm looking forward to this session today. And to kick off the morning, and I'm going to invite some of our customers, current customers and former customers, to come to the stage and give you insights into their GRC implementations, or their expertise, and how they went about doing things, to how they innovated in those GRC or risk or compliance programs. I would like to invite Michael. Michael Cover of Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan. Hello, Michael.
Hello, hello. We'll say this.
Yeah.
First, yep, we're good. What I will say is this, is that the first step's over. I made it on stage and I didn't fall over. So we'll start there as a win.
Michael is a director of their divisional technology and operations. Michael has more than 15 years of experience in the areas of information technology, corporate strategy, process improvement, and program implementation. And GRC implementation at Michigan is one of the oldest implementations at Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan. And thanks to Michael for his relentless support to us and getting that program up and running. It is still in use for over 10 years.
Coming up on 10 years now.
10 years. And it's not implemented for one area or one particular domain. It's an entire GRC program. Over to you, Michael. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. Thank you. Good morning. All right, so a couple things. I'm going to try to be as short and sweet as possible as we're going through this, but we're going to talk a little bit today. We're going to talk a little bit about our company, about Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan. We're going to talk a little bit about our program, and then we're going to talk about some ahas. some things to watch out for as you're going through and you're doing your implementation. So first and foremost, thank you very much, Prasad, for the kind introduction. Appreciate it. So who are we? Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan is the largest healthcare payer in the state of Michigan. We are one of the top 10 payers in the country. We have all sorts of plans ranging from commercial to HMO, PPO, Medicare, Medicaid, Medicare Advantage plans, so on and so forth. And we currently represent between 5 and 6 million lives we're supporting on a year in and year out basis. See if I can figure out this clicker. There we go. All right. So let's talk a little bit about our program. As Prasad mentioned, we're about going on just over 10 years now in our journey. Our GRC implementation is a journey. First and foremost, anytime we're talking about tools and applications, this is a program. This is a program that we started back in 2012 with our purchase of MetricStream. Since then, we have grown. And when we started, in our first implementation was with 2 modules. We started with the Patient Protection Affordable Care Act, utilizing the Compliance Management Issue Management modules. Those modules supported 1 core use case for monitoring and management of the Patient Protection Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, for about 60 end users across our enterprise. Since then, we've implemented an entire suite. We're up to 8 modules now. We have almost 5,000 core end users of the system in the solution, and 16,000 everybody, employees and contractors in our organization, is using at least one of these things. So we have grown exponentially within our program, and now we're at the point where we're integrating other tools like robotic process automation through Blue Prism. We've integrated our healthcare fraud, waste, and abuse data analytics platform. We've integrated to our data layer for our entire organization through APIs, where we're taking the information out of MetricStream, bolted it into Power BI solutions like Tableau for additional reporting, and giving that data back into our business. When we talk about the program itself, our major focus and how we've been able to be successful in the way that we launch our system and launch the program and continue to grow it across our enterprise is because we aligned way back at the start of this thing on how we were talking. So the biggest thing that you want to focus on is your foundational elements, those things on the front end that make sure that when you are rolling out to various business areas, you're able to say, hey, when I talk about a risk in a certain way, it means the same thing to this person over here, which means the same thing to this person on this side as well. That's critical. If you're not doing that, you wind in a situation where you're going to be hyper customized, over configured, and you can't upgrade your system or your solution. We've been really fortunate in the way that we've built our application from a GRC perspective with MetricStream, with some of our partners along the way, like the EYs and the PwCs and the KPMGs of the world, helping us with our program at various times, especially as we've been taking on things like robotic process automation, talking about AI, regulatory change management. If you were fortunate enough to hear a couple of my team members, Nick Cannon and Jason James, yesterday, talk about our regulatory change management implementation, that's bringing some AI into how we do things as well. And it's critical from start to end. So from a leadership, we'll say here, before I move on, I'll tell you this. It's all about the reporting. How you get everything into the tool is one thing. How you use the tool is something completely different. And how you get out the information is critical. And it has to align from soup to nuts, cradle to grave, front to back, the reporting. So how do we do this? How have we been able to build our program and run our program out? We focus on 3 things. We have a simple mantra in our program. We have a simple mantra in our company, and it's ready, willing, and able. What this means is when we're working with a business area and they come to us and they say, hey, I'm trying to do something, I'm trying to automate my policy life cycle, my issue management, my control monitoring, my risk mitigation processes, we look at this simple mantra. Are you ready? Are you willing? And are you able to do the implementation itself? And what that physically means is this. So from a ready perspective, are the business areas mature enough? Are they ready for the technology? Meaning, do they have a defined process in place, or am I going to have to build your process as we're trying to bring you into the tool? You got to get somewhere on the maturity scale for us to be really successful. When you're willing, are you receiving pushback? Meaning that from the top to bottom, senior-most leader, are they ready for the application? Are they willing to accept what's occurring? Or maybe it's the staff that are really excited and this person's not, or vice versa, right? It's not going to work if you don't have top to bottom integration and people that are ready for the change and they're willing for the change. And then we talk about able. Can they dedicate the time to do it? These things aren't implementations or tools or processes where you're actually sitting there and you're going, okay, we're going to be done in a couple weeks. We're going to launch this use case and it's going to be fantastic and everything's going to work great. Not how it works. It's a process. You have to be able to go through that. And you have to work. And if you don't have one of these things occurring, you run into a ton of pushback. You run into things like, oh, well, this has worked well for us, great. This is how we've always done things. Go customize my solution. And if you don't have a fantastic team on the front end that understands your processes, understands what you're trying to do from an enterprise vision from the onset, you're going to run into a position where you're going to over-customize a solution. And before you know it, that over-customization, that over-configuration makes it really difficult to bring additional people on. So you have to work within the confines. But we find this mantra, ready, willing, and able, is huge in how we do things. Talking a little bit about some of our ahas. I wanted to break these into 4 major categories: from a process, people, technology, and from a vendor perspective. These are things in our program that we really focus on, meaning every time we implement, every time we launch, we sit down and we go and we do a lessons learned. We send out surveys, we take feedback from folks. The team is constantly driving some of those updates in how they do things as well. In each one of those implementations, we're trying to learn because we're a program, right? We've only been really successful because we've been focused on that ready, willing, and able. And we're looking back at how things worked in the past, especially when I understand that I'm implementing for policy management as an example. My policy management implementation for one group isn't always going to be the same for the next. So that ability to be able to work through and understand, take your key learnings, figure out what's worked for you, what hasn't worked for you, and roll that out holistically. So on the process side, first and foremost, we talked about those foundational elements on the front end. Align, align, align. When you're looking at your GRC program and you're looking at it holistically and you say, look, I've got one group that's trying to do control mitigation, control self-assessments, put all those groups together and have them together and align on what those control self-assessments look like. Look at that process. Challenge people to kind of move out of that. It's the same way we've always done things, right? You want to challenge that sentiment and push people to align together. Additionally, when you're going through, we want to look at the risk mitigation strategies and efforts as you're moving through on that front. On the people front, like I said, change that mindset, challenge that mindset. This is how we've always done things. It doesn't work with the technology, especially when you start bolting on cool things like robotic process, AI. It's a different way of doing things, getting data out of the system, out of the solution, and into your reporting mechanisms. If it's inside MetricStream, great, or your GRC solution, fantastic. If you're using your combination of your GRC solution, plus like the Power BIs of the world or the Tableaus of the world, that's great too. On the technology side, hammer on, limit your customizations wherever you can. Make sure that you can upgrade. Make sure that you're taking a very deliberate approach into what you're changing within the application across the board. And then on the vendor front, I'll tell you this. Don't let them leave. Keep them around. I know they love to hear that, but whoever you're using from an integration standpoint, keep them around your program. Keep them close. If you have funds to be able to have an on-site BA, I highly recommend it. If you have funds to work with some of the integration partners or the partners that you use within your company, I highly recommend that as well. Keep them around to help keep those guardrails up. That outside voice works really well. We've been successful in our program all the way back from 2011 to where we are today because my leader, Michelle Samuels, asked a simple question. We could be doing this better. Why aren't we doing this better? What do we need to do to change? From there, we've been able to drive our program from a top-down approach, from a leadership, 100% buy-in all the way across my C-suite and what we're trying to do and how we're trying to accomplish. That's a fantastic thing. So when people say, are you able to be successful? How are you able to be successful? I say this. Senior leadership buy-in's great. Yep, we got that. We've got that alignment. We have that alignment right across. Do we have the alignment from the business perspective? Yes. But it really, from a program management and implementation, I wouldn't be as successful as I am from a GRC program leader, but from Michigan's perspective, if it wasn't for my team. We wouldn't be where we are if it wasn't for my team. They live this stuff day in and day out. They understand what our business is trying to do. They are the real change agents day in and day out as part of this program. And they're the ones that are really pushing the integration with some of these fantastic tools and bolting them into our GRC program. I wouldn't be here if it weren't for them. So thank you very much. I know I got a couple of them here with me today, and it's those guys in the back right there. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Prasad. Yeah.
I have a question. What challenges have you faced as you're implementing your mantra of ready, willing, and able, culturally, as it relates to risk?
As it relates to risk, that's a great question. So I will tell you this. If I had an hour and a half, we could get down to it. But when we're thinking about how we're implementing risk from an organizational standpoint, we're running into that ready, willing, and able. At Michigan, we had to change the way that we categorize risk, how we monitor risk, and how we score risk. That was a primary driver across the board. And just because our ERM program, as many of you probably have similar experiences where your ERM program is driving so much of that information, right? But your scoring methodology for ERM is going to be completely different than it would be for like audit risk, right? When you consider how you score, we had to look at that and align across the board and say, hey, and be willing to say, ERM's perspective is ERM's perspective. And it's a great perspective. But how I want to score over here in enterprise audit, from a compliance perspective, from a business area and unit perspective, is going to be different. But I need to easily be able to see that perspective with any system and tool that we're trying to do. So we had to change the way that we viewed risk and be a little bit more nimble in how we score risk, but still being able to get back to the ERM view every single time that we score. So for us, it was a leadership alignment across the board, and we ran into, when you kind of talk about that ready, willing, and able, that willing piece can be a real grind sometimes. And it's getting people on board and keeping them on board that we found of the three, it's that. We very rarely, it's the, folks always want the tools, they want the tech. And they'll find ways to make it work from an able perspective. But you'll run into the, if I go do this tech thing, implement whatever tool or system that it is, what does that mean for me and my people? And you have to change that mindset and that thought process. We ran into that a lot, especially with the way that we run our risk categorization across the enterprise.
Thank you.
So we have become friends, and I do want to just acknowledge something that yesterday I was unavoidably delayed yesterday morning. So I know Gaurav gave a shout out on the keynote yesterday, and I wasn't here. And it's not because Prasad is my favorite. So just, it was just one of those circumstantial things. So really what I wanted to just share, I will have the opportunity to spend some time with you all later in the day where we'll be able to go into a lot more detail. But really I thought it'd be kind of useful to share just a little bit of the journey that I've gone through in the context of security, and particularly then governance, risk, and compliance, and kind of share that journey with you. And then later today we'll go into a lot more detail on some of the aspects. You'll see on the deck here that I've put some kind of fairly provocative statements. They're deliberate. I'm not going to spend the next 9.5 minutes trying to plow through all of those. But what I would encourage you is just to think about those statements, and then we'll cover off a lot of these later on in the day. But I will talk about some of the aha moments that I've had along the way. So I think perhaps it's probably worth sharing the story first of all. As you can hear by my accent, I came all the way from Texas. If you know a little bit about the history of the United States, this is what Texas sounded like about 240 years ago, give or take. And that's not actually even being facetious. If you go to has anyone visited the Alamo, by the way? Right, so if you visit the Alamo, and you see the memorials, and it has a list of all the people that fought in the last stand of the Alamo. and more than half of them were Irish. So I'm actually not joking that parts of Central Texas at least kind of sounded like this a good while back. So anyway, I was actually an Irish family, raised just outside of Liverpool. No, I don't support Liverpool Football Club. Manchester United is my team, just for the record. And so I've lived in a number of different countries around the world. I had the terrible, unfortunate experience of living in Bermuda. So I started in risk management in offshore finance. So that was at the Bank of Bermuda, which is the offshore arm now of HSBC. From Bermuda, I moved to North Dallas. I know what you're thinking. My wife said the same thing. So we lived in North Dallas, spent some time living in Spain, back to Dallas again, spent some time living in Malaysia. I loved living in Malaysia. Southeast Asia is amazing. You'll see, look out for that one later today because we're going to come back to a little bit of a reference to Southeast Asia. And then when I went back to Texas again, I was like, I'm kind of all Dallased out. And so I moved to Austin. I love music. It's a great music scene, great fitness scene. And so it's good risk management. You can party hard and then you've got the opportunity to recover later. So that's a little bit about my story. So what I want to share is particularly why kind of North Dallas. And what it was is I joined EDS, which was then acquired by Hewlett-Packard. And that became the outsourcing business of HP Enterprise Services. I know that was a long time ago. I was 5 when I started my career, and I got married when I was 6. It's the Irish way. So at Hewlett-Packard, I had the opportunity there to run security, risk, and compliance for all of the outsourced business at Hewlett-Packard. So what that basically meant is we had about 3,000 to 3,500 sizable enterprises where we managed the IT and sometimes the OT for those organizations. So just give you a flavor of the types of business. It was everything from US Navy Marine Corps to UK Ministry of Defense, British government, US government, Singapore government, American Airlines, Lufthansa, Bank of America, Deutsche Bank, BP, Shell, the list goes on. So every industry imaginable in about 65 countries or so. So as a leader of security, risk, and compliance, me and my team, we didn't have to focus on one corporation with a handful of regulatory bodies that we were accountable to, with one suite of policies and controls. We had to do that 3,000 times. And so at its peak, the organization that I had the privilege of leading, it peaked at exactly 1,843 professionals spread across about 60 countries. You never forget a number like that when you have to manage not just the budgets, but the review cycles. So a huge organization. However, it was a huge organization until we remember that it was to address risk and compliance for 3,000 plus organizations. So it really just was not enough people. And that's really where we embarked on the automation of controls testing. You heard from Grace Beeson yesterday from Guidewire. Grace was part of my leadership team at HP, and she and her team basically developed, and this was back about 7 years ago, so it was kind of new then, and it's now kind of becoming more commonplace today to do automated control testing. And so when we think about AI and machine learning, we were really kind of leading edge and bleeding edge in AI and machine learning because we had to be. It was the only way we could scale at that scale to deliver the capabilities we needed around compliance management. So that really, for me, made the foundation or formed the foundation of what I did next in risk management. So I left what went from HP to HPE to DXC, and I joined Verizon. I joined Verizon with 2 hats, basically. One was to lead the cybersecurity strategy development execution, and the other was to build out the risk and compliance program at Verizon. So this was about 2018. Now, prior to moving to Verizon, one of the aha moments I had when we think about risk and risk quantification was this. If we look at the risk quantification methods and models that are out there today, we might immediately start thinking about those models that try to calculate an annualized loss expectancy. And that's one of the things I'm alluding to here in this, this provocative list, because one of the aha moments I had was one of the accounts or one of the clients that we supported was the largest gas and oil company in the world. when I was at HP. And I remember walking into their lobby, and you have like the tickers that run around some lobbies. It shows what's going on, the highlights in the news and what the stock market's doing. And one of the statistics that caught my eye was the number of days since a death. Now that was a statistic. That was an objective for that company. We heard from Donati yesterday about HSE and safety and so on. But that really struck a chord with me. It's like, oh, so what the ticker didn't say is how much money did we lose last quarter because we had to pay the families of somebody that died on one of our oil rigs. That wasn't the statistic. It wasn't the financial loss. It was the loss of life. That was the denominator, was human life. So that for me was an aha moment. So then thinking about risk quantification, it's like, well, risk quantification has to do more than try to manage or prevent financial loss. There is so much more to risk management and risk quantification. So when I joined Verizon, I inherited a team that was doing about 500 or so risk assessments every month. What I devised with the team there was a methodology that didn't try to calculate or estimate annualized loss expectancy, but rather turned it upside down. And was to quantify risk based on the value of the asset in the first place. What is the value of the asset that we're trying to protect? So essentially developed a brand new approach to quantifying risk based on the asset value. And then we think about likelihood, rather than guessing at likelihood or trying to look at some past performance of certain scenarios to say, well, that's going to predict our likelihood. Or rather than using a Monte Carlo simulation to try to run some random numbers against something that's actually not random, one thing that is finite is not only the number of assets and the value of the assets, and those assets could be a human life, by the way, but the other thing that's finite is our controls. So I lean back into that huge scale thing that we did at Hewlett-Packard around controls efficacy testing, because if the more effective our controls are, then likelihood will go down. The less effective our controls are, then likelihood will go up. So the scale that we were able to codify that at was by the time I left Verizon, we weren't doing 500 risk assessments a month. We were doing 4,000 risk assessments every 15 minutes, using 2.2 billion data points in any 24-hour period. Now, those 2.2 billion data points were already there. It wasn't because we did this program, but we consumed what was already there, and we turned it into a view on risk. So we'll get the opportunity later today to go into a lot more detail as to kind of how we did that. But I thought it would be just kind of interesting and useful to share with you all that journey of going from a compliance-centric at scale to a risk-centric that gave us a meaningful way to move forward. So with that, Prasad, back to you.
Thank you, Gavin. Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Yeah. What challenges have you faced when you're implementing GRC solutions in these large organizations? You can pick one of your
one of 1,000. Okay. I think one of the biggest challenges that we actually faced was, and a lot of other people have referenced it as well, is establishing a common taxonomy or a common vocabulary. Like, what do we mean by risk? Some people say, well, as an example, I remember being in a meeting with a bunch of lawyers. No offense to any lawyers, by the way, if there's any in the room. Being in a meeting with a bunch of lawyers, and we were talking about a particular situation, and one of the lawyers said, well, that's going to increase the risk. And what I pointed out is, no, it doesn't increase the risk. It changes the likelihood. And so that's an example where establishing that view of what do we really mean by risk, and kind of what it landed on was essentially saying, if you take the word risk and exchange it for the word consequence, now you're making a risk statement. So we're not changing the consequence, we're changing the likelihood of the consequence. The consequence stays the same. And so that was probably the biggest challenge. So we particularly at Verizon, we invested probably about 3 months with all different business partners and different operations and different IT groups to get everybody onto a common language when it comes to risk. Without that, we would have been spinning our wheels for probably still now. The other thing I will point out as well, because one of the other questions that was asked previously is kind of how did MetricStream feature in that? So at Verizon, we had a number of different products with different brands that provided GRC tooling capability. What we opted to do was to implement MetricStream, and what was appealing was the M7 at the time, the M7 kind of platform, because my goal was not to displace an existing GRC tool, because we had 6 of them. So that wasn't my objective. My objective was to accomplish the integration that we talked about to give us that kind of literally end-to-end scale that we need around risk management and compliance management. So the challenge that we threw in front of MetricStream was, we would like you to integrate with your competitors' products. And that's what MetricStream really pulled through on, because we wanted to use MetricStream as a backplane so we could interface with all these other capabilities. Now, a byproduct was, by the way, we did displace some non-MetricStream products, but that wasn't the objective. That was a byproduct of us targeting the actual business outcomes and using M7 to do that.
Thank you. Thank you, Gavin, for your insights. Yeah. Thank you again. I'm now thrilled to introduce Beth Rodofker. Beth. In the middle of progress. Yeah. Just a quick intro on Beth. I've been working with Beth for over 20 years, starting our days in Lehman Brothers, and then again at Citi. Beth was a chief risk officer for operational risk at both those firms. And I learned quite a bit about operational risk and how you manage risk programs, how you manage your risk profiles of operational risk, and how they relate to market risk and credit risk. All of that stuff, the most complicated stuff, Beth is great at deciphering those and simplifying those so that everybody can understand, and so everybody comes along the journey of implementing what you're after. And I'm not following a script here. Beth led global operation risk management organizations at GE Capital, in addition to Citigroup and Lehman Brothers. And she's currently a senior executive advisor for PwC. And you never know what is going to hit you. It's all about how resilient you are when a crisis hits. And there is no one better than Beth to share her wisdom, because we lived through buildings collapsing, to major financial crisis, and Beth handled all those risks and came out of those challenges we had with flying colors. And there is no one to hear other than Beth when it came to operational risk. Thank you. And please welcome Beth.
Thank you, Prasad. Appreciate it. Wow, it's really great to be here. I've been so fortunate today and yesterday to see a lot of familiar faces, to reconnect with folks that I've worked with over the years. And Prasad is one of those amazing colleagues that we do go way back to when we were children. I'm going to bring some of this together and cover some things that Mike mentioned, because we're kindred spirits apparently, or maybe a little psychic with each other. And also talk a little bit about what the value proposition is. Yesterday, there was a discussion about how important it is to make sure that you get buy-in from the organization. So I'm going to cover that. But I also want to first mention that it's been really exciting to see over the last 10, 15, 20 years, the progress that the GRC platforms have made, and the opportunities that we certainly have to take things to the next level. Quite a number of years ago now, my GRC lead at the time came to one of these conferences, and when he came back, I asked him, "What did you learn?" And in his soft-spoken and quite direct way, he said to me, "I learned that the system you don't have is the one you like the best." So when I got over thinking that he was, very wise and Yoda-like. I became a little depressed because I am a really glass half full type girl, and for those of you who know me, I like my wine glasses to continue to be filled up. And I recognized that I really needed to double down on my focus as a senior operational and non-financial risk leader on vision, and making sure that from the perspective of starting out with a really clear vision and presenting that to the organization, getting the buy-in, and making sure that it's integrated in with the technology strategy, that's really a key starting point. Refreshing the vision, making sure that vision is continually communicated and that you're staying the course on it is really important. I've come into a number of organizations where there was no vision and it was just chaos, and creating that focus in terms of what programs, what functions, what's nice to have, what must be included in the GRC platform is really critical. And then obviously across the lines of defense, who's going to be in the boat with you, rowing in the same direction. The tech strategy needs to be part of that. A picture definitely can speak 1,000 words to show how the ecosystem can fit together, how the integrations work, and it's really important that the connections are clear, and that whether you're linking issues and losses and metrics to control effectiveness ratings, or whether you're bringing in your third parties, your technology applications, or the laws and regs that impact your assessment units, that the details of how those integrations are going to work are really well thought out from the technology strategy perspective out of the gates. And they need to be part of the upfront design. The next thing has been mentioned over and over and over again, and Mike talked about the willing, and it is so critical. I think it's one of the biggest challenges is to make sure that across the lines of defense, so whether it's compliance, audit, operational, non-financial risk, or whether it's across the businesses with technology, that everybody's in the boat together and stays in the boat together. One of the key things that these tools need to really become are value added to the business managing their day-to-day risk. And many times they start out being compliance exercises and people feel like they're check the box. And so getting that buy-in out of the gates in order to make sure that these are tools that the businesses use and getting their input, their feedback as part of this process is absolutely critical. Talked a lot about preparedness, and this is the call it the crown jewel, if you will, of making sure that you're successful. Having clear business requirements and a starting point for those business requirements is really important. The foundations we've talked about, the common taxonomies, process, risk, control, products, making sure that everybody is bought into them, and that there's a good ongoing process for updating them, because things do dynamically change in organizations. There is an Achilles heel for having common taxonomies that are used across the organization. You need to really have an ongoing process to manage the change around those, because all of a sudden you have one risk taxonomy that 20 different modules are using. And if you want to change one thing because one part of the organization wants something new, or a new risk comes in, or a new way to think about it comes in, that is going to impact 20 other people, and that has to be really well thought out and planned. And so it's important to have that ongoing change management process around those foundations, and to be really thoughtful about it. Pilots for learning is important, but also incorporating lessons learned all along the way is really critical. This is dynamic, it's a journey, as Mike mentioned, and that ongoing learning is really, really important. Resourcing, leveraging the knowledge in the organization, leveraging external expertise, leveraging people who have done this before, made mistakes and had successes is really important, and getting the planning for who's going to really be responsible, getting full-time people who are dedicated to this, who are passionate about it, who want to be on that journey for the long run, who know how to hit the wall and walk around it and make decisions quickly, and be a part of a team is also really important. And then clearly a roadmap and a comprehensive plan. this is something that I think we all know, but isn't that easy. A really disciplined approach. So, thou shalt not customize it really sounds, great, but it's really hard. And, making it painful for people to customize can sometimes be a way of avoiding those sets of things, but you really have to have a strong commitment to making sure that you don't. And it'll solve a lot of problems at the end. Fortunately or unfortunately, I've learned this one the hard way, and I know some of you in the room have as well. So this one is key. I've always felt like it's important to, from a leadership perspective, be one team, not just technology, not risk, not compliance. We're one team driving toward a common vision and passionate about getting it done together. Prasad and I have done this a long time, and his team has always been part of my team. They come to my staff meetings, they're part of the excuse me, they're part of the strategy, and I think it's really important to make sure that everybody feels like they're in it together. And we talked about organization in terms of ongoing change management. Make sure you plan for what's going to happen after you implement. That's really critical. And finally, often and ongoing communication. I don't think you can over-communicate about what are the objectives, what are the next steps, what's coming out, what's new. Get feedback back from the organization, put that back into your communications. Communicate. People feel really good when they understand what's happening. They feel really crappy when they don't. They get annoyed, and so telling people what's going on, is really important. All of this sounds, easy and straightforward, and a lot of it has been talked about yesterday and this morning. But I really do think that a lot of this is hard. It's not easy, and it takes a lot of commitment, a lot of fortitude, and a lot of focus. And so, in terms of I feel like I'm going to preach to the choir here a little bit because I'm in a room of people who are really passionate about this. But I know that it's important that you take these back to your organization. So hopefully some of these thoughts will enable you to make the case for continuing your journeys. I do believe that it's hard to put a price tag against some of these benefits, because when you put in GRC tools, you get a toe and an arm and a leg of savings. And so to put a business case together, you really do need to have some of the qualitative things that become quite obvious, but are truly important, because without it, there's chaos, and you really lose a lot of the opportunity to get to a real-time risk management capability that's valuable to the businesses in day-to-day life. So the first one clearly is you build the capability once and you use it across the organization by many people. I've seen so many times that different parts of large organizations want to build their own thing. And they end up building something that's really great, but it can't be leveraged somewhere else. Or somebody else goes and builds something and it's slightly different and talks and looks and feels a little different. And so if everybody can get together and build it once and leverage it across the organization, that's going to be the most effective. I mentioned used in day-to-day risk management by businesses and in their operational activities. I can't emphasize this enough. I've seen and heard so many times that folks have been frustrated in the business because they feel like something is put upon them as a compliance exercise or regulatory requirement. And these tools can be so much more than that and need to be. Efficient execution of risk management requirements. This is obviously another benefit. We've got an opportunity to actively monitor, near real time or real time, to have a single place for authoritative data to use for centralized reporting, great transparency, and talking now about advanced analytics and things that can really help you create the insights that are necessary in order to manage the risk. And then, as Prasad mentioned, I've been through a number of crises. When I joined GE Capital, and 4 months later, along with a number of other senior risk leaders, GE decided to sell GE Capital. A lot of the senior management had been there for a long time. And I got focused with the team on pivoting to think about the risks in a different way and create a new cadence, leveraging our tools to get data that was slightly different than what we had been managing day-to-day risk based on. And one of the senior leaders said, while you're so calm, you're so focused, you've got the team now marching to this, new approach. How come you're, not in a panic? And I said, well, I like to be graceful under pressure, but we're not running from 2 crumbling buildings or going bankrupt today. So it's still a better day. We have time. And I think putting things in perspective in a crisis and really getting focused and using the tools that you have are a real opportunity. I also think that, and finally, that there's a huge opportunity now to take this connected, integrated GRC platform, harness all the data that's in it to the next level to continue to add to the value proposition and to make sure that we do things like think about how to automate inherent risk, think about how to get a real end-to-end automated RCSA so businesses can really look at those risks and make sure that they make sense rather than having to create the whole thing from scratch and bottoms up and really harnessing the capabilities for real-time monitoring. So it's exciting to think about where we've come. I'm glad to see that people like their tools now, not the ones they don't have, and that there's a great opportunity moving forward. So thank you. And it's great to see everyone.